My name is Tina Bolding, and I'm with the Cornerstone On Demand Foundation in the role of Director for DisasterReady.org. On October 10th is World Mental Health Day, and in honor of that day, I'm truly pleased to have with me 3 experts from the Peaceful Heart Network to talk about strategies we can use to manage stress and trauma. And I'm really passionate about this topic because it's so critical for humanitarian aid workers, but really it's very important for all of us as we learn to manage stress and trauma in our lives. Welcome to everybody. Thank you so much for being with me today. And by way of introduction, I would like to introduce Ulf Sandstrom and Gunilla Hamne, who are trauma consultants and trainers. And then we also have Dr. Siyana Mahroof-Shaffi, who is a medical doctor, and they all work together. So Ulf, please get us started by telling us a little bit about the Peaceful Heart Network and how the 3 of you work together.
The Peaceful Heart Network, we're a nonprofit that was founded around 15 years ago. It all started with my colleague Gunilla actually traveling around the world as a journalist and finding stories from people who had lived through trauma. And so she basically went back and said, I need to do something. And so she found a technique that worked to relieve trauma. And when she traveled with that technique, I found a blog of hers which said basically, I'm relieving trauma with people who don't know how to read and write. People have no trained skills or anything, and they can work with this. It's safe, it works. And I said, I have to learn it. And so when she came back to Sweden, I learned it, and we founded the Peaceful Heart with the mission to help the most vulnerable populations of the world. And that's why we go traveling to places where there are needs, where needs are immediate or where people have been forgotten in some way, which people sometimes are, which is why humanitarian efforts are needed. And that's where we met Dr. Siyana.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, well, let's get started. Siyana, as a medical doctor, what types of mental health behaviors do you see as you work with humanitarian aid workers and then also people that have been in communities affected by crisis?
Thank you for the introduction and having me here. So, yes, it's been a pleasure working with Ulf and Gunilla. From the mental health point of view, in the humanitarian sector, you can imagine that things are often a little bit more dramatic. So there's a lot of psychosomatization, a lot of physical manifestation of mental illness. However, apart from the setting and apart from the language and the vulnerability, the obvious vulnerability, the layers are pretty similar. And in terms of the presentation, obviously there's a book's worth of types of things and how they can manifest. But what's really important is recognizing how prominent the mental effect of their trauma is in their presentation. So it has to be borne in mind. So if you don't think about it, you don't consider it. So the physical is obviously people clutching their chest, people collapsing. That was actually one of the most common ways I first got introduced to it. Is people brought in, collapse, and then by the end of me actually doing very little because I had nothing more to do. I didn't have a full setup of a clinic in the early days. Just giving them that time, giving them a space to lay down, let their blood pressure regulate, let their breathing regulate, and they would just come back. But that was the initial presentation. But of course, they carry with them those deep layers of psychological trauma. Now, stress and trauma is not just confined to the humanitarian sector, as we know. But the real deal is how you deliver any kind of care at all. The first stage of any consultation is to talk and to understand each other and to know what to do. And so that's why when I met with Ulf and Gunilla, they were able to train me effectively in these kind of non-spoken techniques, non-spoken ways of showing relaxation and demonstrating that effectively, and self-empowering as well, empowering clients themselves, you know, that there's something, and volunteers themselves, there's something we can actually do together. But I think we all know that the first stage is just a smile and just that sense of calm, and first aid psychology involves that, you know, giving them that safe space, which is sometimes the hardest thing to do. I don't know if that answers some of your questions.
Right.
I'm trying to sort of condense it.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's good. Well, one of the strategies is trauma tapping. And so, Gunilla, can you talk a little bit about what is tapping and what is it not?
Yeah, I mean, so we have specialized in sharing techniques that anybody can do. So this is, like we say, on both sides. It's humanitarian aid workers as well as those you meet, as well as in ordinary day, the stress of ordinary day. And the trauma tapping technique is a psychosensory technique, meaning you use the body to heal the mind, you can say. I mean, you use the body to send signals to your brain, to the emotional control center of your brain, that things are calm. And like Siyana said, like this feeling of calm is there. So this technique is so simple, and it has been around for like 40 years, the tapping techniques. We simplified some of the techniques that we had learned into this trauma tapping technique. So it is without spoken words. So it is really letting your body get so calm while exposing yourself to whatever it is that bothers you. And while you're tapping on these specific points that send signals through your nervous system to your brain, things calm down, and even the triggers are decoded. So there is no more that whatever it was that triggered the person or you will no longer trigger. Like for some who have been through, like in the refugee camp where we worked together, the three of us in Lesbos in Greece in the 2006 or 17, 18, 19, 20, there was a fire, for example. And then after that, anybody can be triggered by just the smell of fire. But with these techniques, you decode this trigger. So no longer you will be triggered in that way. Instead of feeling then danger, you just feel, oh, fire. So this is the change that people go through when they use this technique. And it can feel like, wow, can it be so simple? And yes, it is. The body and the mind is so intelligent that there are these very simple ways of healing from these symptoms of trauma. So it is fascinating. And that's why we continue, like I said, for 15 years of sharing these techniques to both humanitarian aid workers, to the people that work with in any setting, anywhere. And also we do, like through Disaster Ready, online courses, because this you can learn through these online courses very easily, actually. So that's a blessing. Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, no, it's great, and it's like you said, I love that it's simple. And I think one key question that people have is, how is the tapping technique different from other like talk therapies or strategies?
Yeah, and there comes
if you like.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, Siyana, if you like.
Well, I mean, just because I know how ineffective the other treatments are from a clinician's point of view. So when we're treating, let's call it post-traumatic stress, there's a few sort of things that can be used, such as classically things like EMDR and these kind of, you need a therapist who's actually specially trained in these strategies, shall we call them. They're time consuming. They need a specially trained therapist. They take time. So even the shortest one I know, called the rewind technique, you need 2 sessions, 3 sessions approximately, which is quite quick in terms of things, but it takes 90 minutes per session, 90 minutes to 2 hours per session. And you need language, you need to be able to speak with people. So there are no drugs, there are no medications actually that can treat post-traumatic stress. All doctors might give is Valium. So something to numb the nerves down, to quieten them down, quieten the people, and completely wrong and ineffective. Okay, so for me, when we had these situations where obviously we had the PTSD, but also people who continually were being traumatized. So they haven't even got to the stage where they were post-traumatic, they were in trauma continuously. It was just amazing to be able to do something that I introduced into the clinic, and in fact invited Gunilla to come and start doing it in our clinic. We gave her a little corner. It literally was a little corner. And she was a very good girl. She sat there in the corner, tapping away. All the patients, including patients like, I had a patient, I remember one of the first ones I asked you to be involved with, Gunilla, was the gentleman with a very high blood pressure. And I thought, you know what? I wonder how much of this is due to stress, because he was already on 4 different medications. He was already on blood pressure tablets. We were able to give him that, but there was nothing else I could do for him. And I just wondered how much of an element of stress was overlying that. And so away Gunilla went, and she started tapping him. And I think we documented the drop, the 10-degree drop in his blood pressure, which for me was enough proof that this needed to be done. There was just no way we could not do it. It's too easy, and there are no side effects, no risk of overdose. We don't need permission or licenses from authorities or governments to do it. We can just teach it to people. It's like a relaxation exercise. And actually in Arabic, that's kind of the term that I use, is tamrinat riha, istirih, which is to relax. You want me to show you something to help you relax? And they're in.
Yeah. And the other thing that I really like about it is that it's immediate. So when I think about talk therapies, as you mentioned, sometimes talking about trauma just re-traumatizes. And when you need help when you're triggered, you need help right then. And so the tapping technique you can do whether you're in the car, the grocery store, wherever you are, wherever the trigger occurs, you can do that. But one of the things that I also found very helpful, and Ulf, I'll ask you to talk about this, because you know it's one of my favorite things from the First Aid Stress and Trauma course that we'll also be talking about here shortly, but is help us understand what stress and trauma do to the body.
Yeah.
And how tapping helps that.
Yeah, and how tapping, and basically, I mean, in the FAST course on disasterready.org, we're active in over 45 countries. We've reached maybe 300,000 people with these techniques today, is our estimate, and most of them are vulnerable populations. And so it's being used in diverse populations. It's being used for addiction recovery. It's being used for people who are being let out of incarceration. It's used for people in villages where incarcerated people are coming back, like after the genocide in Rwanda, which is happening now, actually. So it's used in many diverse places and situations, and stress is something highly misunderstood by most people. I would say, in the way that people believe that trauma is chronic, it's pathological. Once you have it, you're broken, which is wrong. People say it can be medicated. It can't. You can use medication to lower the symptoms, but you cannot depotentiate it. You cannot remove it. To do that, you need to slightly activate it and do these techniques, and it actually does work. But I say I usually liken stress to, I call this is just a glass, but let's imagine it's a bucket. So I call this the bucket of resilience. And this is how much stress, metaphorically, you can handle in a day, right? And so, the day goes, and today you had fun, and you had so much fun that you got a little bit stressed. And then, your boss called, and then you had this little thing that happened with a refugee boy because you were working humanitarian, and the boy reminded you of your son. So now the glass fills up quickly because it always happens under the radar, right? Something subconsciously affects us. Now, so this is your stress at the moment. And what you're supposed to do is, when you go to sleep, or when you socialize, or when you take a walk in the woods, or when you dance or whatever, you empty this so that you can handle more stress, and it's fine. And so you're ready for the next day. But if you don't sleep for 3 days and you keep filling it up, what finally happens, it'll just be so full that if anybody pokes you or touches you or says the wrong thing, it's going to spill over. And that's when you either go into hypervigilance, you're reactive, you're aggressive, or you go into hypovigilance, which means basically that you're shut down. You're like seems like a burnout state because your body goes into defense and you're in a shut down state. So either of these can happen. And when there's very little up to the edge, it takes very little for that to flow over. So trauma is when something fills this up really fast and unexpectedly. And once it flows over, your whole system is going to write down a list of anything it needs to remember so this will never happen again, right? So glass, your bucket of resilience brims over the edge. And so your security system goes, I was listening to Mozart in my headphones. Got it. That's on the checklist now. Next time you listen to Mozart in your headphones, you will be stressed instead of calm, because that will remind you that last time you did, you had, big fear or panic or unpleasant experience. So this list just grows bigger. It's like a backpack you're carrying, gets bigger and bigger with the years. And you keep filling and emptying your bucket and believing everything is fine until something unexpected comes and it flows over. And now you have a perpetuating defense in your system. We call PTSD perpetuating traumatic stress defense. That's our acronym, which means that anything that reminds you of that will warn you. So you will be stressed when you hear Mozart. You will be stressed for stuff that might come to your attention without you being fully conscious, because we have something called neuroception. We can sense things going on so that we can react faster than our slow, logical mind. Does that work for you?
Yes, I love it, because it's such a great reminder. Every time I hear it, I think, oh yeah, that's how that works. And that's why we need to be mindful, and particularly on this World Mental Health Day, take time to learn techniques like tapping that can really help us to be able to manage our stress so that that we can function properly. And so there's a lot I know that we could unpack. And the course goes into much of it and actually teaches you the tapping technique and even self-havening technique. But one of the things that I also wanted to hear from you, maybe one or two of you, is a short story of when you think about one person that has utilized tapping to manage their stress or trauma, how that stands out to you. The one story that you're going to remember for years moving forward. Who would like to share one?
I mean, I would love to share one, and I can say that was, if I could say, my the first time when I really myself felt that, wow, this is really such a powerful technique. And this was in Rwanda, where this work started. So we were working with survivors of the orphan survivors of the genocide of 1994, but this was in 2008, perhaps. So it was many years after, but people were living with the symptoms, still having nightmares. So there was this young lady, Chantal. She was living with her family at that time. The parents had been killed. Some of the siblings were killed. So they had created a new family where her younger brother was the head of the family. And she couldn't manage at all. She was having constant headache. They didn't know what had happened to her during the genocide because she had never been able to really, her mind had protected her from remembering what had happened. So she spent a lot of time in bed. So when I met her the first time, she was just lying under a sheet, a bed sheet, because it was, and it was in the middle of the day. And then just, together with her brother, asking if she wanted to see if this could help. And the brother explained what it was, because he had already learned before. He had been in a workshop. And that's when he said that, please help my sister. She was perhaps at that time 25. So by doing just, she was laying down. And as we have said, you don't need any language. And being really traumatized, you don't have to ask anybody to expose yourself to any thought or anything, because things are on 24/7. It's rather the opposite. Like you say, you can be re-traumatized by saying something or relating things. So just by doing this tapping on this, I mean, it's like 13 points. It's on very easily reached parts of your body, the hands, the face, and the chest. So it's not very complicated, and you can reach it on somebody else also. So we did it, the brother and me together, one time, and then I came back another time. And the third time I came there, she was outside, and she came running to me and say, "Oh, welcome, would you like a glass of water?" And this was extraordinary, because she hadn't been able to express herself and reach out to other people because she had been completely hidden in her fear and her unsafety and her nightmares. And this continued, So before she had not dressed, in Rwanda, like in many other places, it's very important how you dress. So she just had a t-shirt on and some pants. Now she had a dress on. She had fixed her hair. She had gone to the hairdresser, and she was smiling, And the brother said, "This is so astonishing. I could never expect that this would happen." Wow. And since then, this has, I've met her many times since then. She even became she started working as a hairdresser. And the years before, she had been completely incapable of managing anything. So this was one of the, the foundation that we share our work. It is to see this huge transformation from 1 or 2 sessions and of 5, 10 minutes. It is like, is this possible? But then when you see it, it's there. So
that's so wonderful. And so you've talked about the importance of tapping and how useful it is, and provided examples of the results and the life-changing transformation of people that are putting this technique into practice. Share a little bit about what the inspiration was for creating the First Aid Stress and Trauma course.
Mm. Yeah, you go ahead, Ulf, because you're the main constructor.
We've been doing this for a long time. And if you want to look at it, I don't mean it as a joke. If you look at some of the best ideologies that are spread, they're spread through a book. There's a scripture, right? So that's how a lot of religion is spread. And if we don't write it down, nobody can read it. It has to go mouth to mouth. So we started by writing a book. A book is printed, it's heavy, it's hard to carry around. So we said, and most of all, if you are traumatized, if you're working as a humanitarian, or if you are a beneficiary of humanitarian aid, your time is short and your glass is almost always fairly full, which means there's not that much room for sitting down and reading a book. Even if you should probably half an hour a day, but that's another story. So we look constantly for ways to spread this so that we can reach as many as possible in where they are, which means short, succinct, and minimum viable product, if you want to speak business talk around that. So that means we did an app. The app is in 38 languages now, and it tells about stress and it tells about the techniques. That is for the beneficiary, but it doesn't give you the backstory and how to approach people and the stuff that we wanted humanitarians to have. Because after working ourselves with humanitarian aid in many different settings, including many settings that are fairly stressful, as it is. And then we said, what if we can create something that can reach as many as possible in a simple way that doesn't require download? That's just online and easy. And then we came across disasterready.org, which is an incredible organization, because what you're doing is you're serving stuff to people who need it in the easiest way possible. So it was you. You said, check out this software, Evolve Authoring, which allows you to make a course that you can upload into any platform. And that really resonated with us, because there is a book by Hesperian called Where There Is No Doctor, which is a fantastic book, which has inspired us. In our turn, it's a village handbook. So we want to do village things that anybody can use. Even if you're a humanitarian working with IT security, you still should be able to handle your stress. So finally, I wrapped my brains around that Evolve Authoring, and it was really useful and simple. And, we just took everything we'd been talking about, cutting it down to the minimum. This is what you need. You should take no more than 30 minutes to learn it. And the motivation was your organization, because we knew that it would reach people.
Oh, that's so wonderful. Yes, and it has. I would strongly encourage everybody to go out to disasterready.org. You can sign up for a free account. And then once you log in, just type first aid stress and trauma or FAST, FAST, into the search bar and select the course. The course is free, the account is free, and it is definitely worth your time to take this course. And it walks through the context, but it also helps you practice the tapping technique, and it's in a great format. So thank you all so much for participating in this discussion today and helping us to honor World Mental Health Day. And yes, just really appreciate all of the work that Peaceful Heart Network is doing and the incredible way that it's making a significant impact for people around the world. So thank you.
I just want to add
much.
one thing to that, because here's the deal. Don't wait until you or somebody you know walks into the wall or is traumatized. This is something like brushing your teeth. So I would say a tapping a day keeps the trauma away.
Oh, that's good. A tapping a day keeps the trauma away. I like that. I like that a lot.
And it's true.
And it's true.
The trauma with the traumatic reactions. Yeah. The lower you have the bucket level of stress, the less risk of being traumatized.
And I think because of the pandemic, everybody can more closely relate to, people that did not have a lot of stress or even anxiety. Before the pandemic, the whole world felt a heavy weight from that, and many people were impacted and traumatized. So I think we can all relate to that a little bit more today and the importance. So definitely, let's all start tapping a day to keep the trauma away. Very good. All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.